The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. Hello everyone, this is Ron, and the topic of today's video is compression, specifically vocal compression. So the first question would be, what do you use compression for, right? The main function of compression is to change the dynamic range of a sound. Now, what is the dynamic range? The dynamic range is the difference between the quietest part of the sound and the loudest part. So the main reason to compress anything is that some parts of a sound are too quiet. So you want to make the loudest part quieter and turn the whole sound up so that the loudest part is as loud as it was before. That increases the average level of sound, and then we will perceive it as being louder overall. So let's go over the controls. You have the attack time, which is how long before the compressor starts reducing the sound. You have the threshold, which is how loud the sound has to be reduced. You have the ratio, which is how much the sound is reduced. And you switch the numbers around. Obviously, this is like 2 to 1. Change that to 1/2. If it was 4 to 1, change that to 1/4. And the audio that's above the threshold would be reduced by that amount. So say if the audio exceeds this threshold right here, then all the audio that is above the threshold will be reduced by half. That's an easier way to think of it, as a fraction rather than a ratio. Then you have the release time. The release time is how long it takes for the sound to stop being reduced after it is no longer louder than the threshold. And then you have this makeup gain, because as I said, you want to turn the sound back up after it is reduced, because you want it to be louder overall in most cases. So now let's look at an audio example. It's the same example from the beginning in the intro, but I turned off the other effects that are over here. Turn off the de-esser too. So it's just got the first EQ and the first compressor. And so I'm going to show you what I did and why. Turn the headphones up. So Nectar 3 has this bypass button with match gain, which is important so you can hear a real difference. Because if one was louder or quieter, you would perceive the louder one as sounding better. So let's look at what it sounds like with just the first EQ and the first compressor. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Now that is the audio after. Let's look at it before. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the... So as you can hear, there's more clarity in the audio. But I'm going to do something unique for this video. And I'm just going to turn off the compressor so you can hear the difference with the compression versus with only the EQ. So let's hear what that sounds like. So this is before compression. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. So as you can hear, the audio becomes slightly more clear and my voice sounds a little bit brighter. So now why did I go about compressing this the way I did? To begin with, when you speak a word that's a transient, so you don't necessarily want the compressor to immediately clamp down on your voice because it might narrow down that transient and then the word will not have as much impact. So if you're speaking something that has more impact, like say a hip hop vocal, you would want to have a longer attack time because you want to preserve the beginning of the word so it retains that punchiness, and you add the makeup gain to the later half of the word so that everything will have a more even sound. And that's on the individual basis of the words, which is how I was viewing this compressor. So the way I was approaching this was that I EQ'd it first to take out any sounds like resonances that I did not like, and then I compressed it to reduce the dynamic range so that it would be a bit more clear. So you can see I have a 4 millisecond attack time because I'm not saying anything that has that much punch to it. And I have a release time that's sort of short because I want to have a smooth transition between words. I don't want compression to remain at its maximum when the next word begins. So for that reason, I'm not going to have a longer release time. And of course, there's no hard fast numbers when you're doing this. You play around with it and see what you like, see where it sounds good, because it would be very difficult for you to try to calculate how you should compress. It's better for you to use your ears. If you look at this button here, it's automatic makeup gain. So it automatically brings the level of the highest peak back to where it was at before compression. So it makes for an easy A/B. And that's the purpose of bypassing with gain match, so that you can hear them sounding at the same level, so you can experience the difference in clarity. So that's what I did in this particular instance. If we look at this second compressor here, the first one I was dealing with words, the second one I was dealing with overall level. And so I added what you call serial compression because you don't want to have one compressor doing too much, for a reason why I will explain later. And so the second one is just attenuating, where I saw that there were some more peaks and I felt like it would be better if they got reduced even more. So in this video, I decided to do something different, and I did the entire process of what I would do to this vocal up to de-essing. I figured to myself that if anyone wants me to go over what I did, say with the EQs, with the first EQ, with the second EQ, why saturation, why that amount, why de-essing, then it affords the opportunity to make more videos. But this one is mainly about compression. So I hope that this was helpful to you, and I hope that you got something out of it. And just so you can have the difference, we can A/B one more time. So with just these two effects, here's with no compression. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside. Here's with the compression added again. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. So now let's talk about what are some other reasons why you would use compression. One reason is to achieve clarity. As you could hear, when I A/B the compressor, when I turn it off and then turn it back on, the compressor makes the vocal sound more clear. So when you're mixing one sound with other sounds, whether you're mixing a song, whether you're mixing Foley for a movie, or whether you're mixing music into a video, you want to hear the entire thing clearly, right? So masking is when one sound makes another sound inaudible because sounds compete for space. When that happens, it's called interference. And if they lie in the same frequency range, one of them will cancel the other out if it is too much louder. So one way to avoid masking is having the sound be loud so it will be dominant. Consider how your loudest friend would stand out if you went to a party. So the next reason is closeness. Because we hear a sound become louder as it gets closer. If we compress a sound and turn it back up, it's also going to sound closer. So that helps to balance the addition of reverb, which makes things sound farther away. When you compress something and then you turn the audio back up, it's also going to have the effect of making it sound closer. Just simply because if you think about it, when someone gets closer to you, they sound louder. The next reason is just the intended purpose, to make something quieter. When something is too loud and it has too big of a dynamic range, you can compress it and not turn it back up, so it will no longer be too loud. So compressors do inherently turn things down. They don't inherently turn things up. They turn something down first and then they turn it back up. That's what I feel might be a common misconception based on things I've seen online. And the last reason is sound design. Sometimes the sound has resonances. In other words, when I was doing this EQ, I was trying to remove the resonances such as boxiness, maybe nasality, that I heard in my own voice. And that increases clarity and it makes a sound better. Now, sometimes the sound is going to have resonances, and these are frequencies that stick out more than others. So you want to remove those if they are problematic, and you use EQ to do that. If you compress something and make the whole sound louder, but the sound has an imperfection like a resonance, then the resonance is going to be magnified because it's louder. You know, it's kind of like when you think about tinnitus, it's sort of like if you heard a whistle in the distance and the whistle was tinnitus, and then you made that louder, then whatever is the most frustrating part of the whistle in terms of frequency, it would also be turned up with everything. And it's like the principle garbage in, garbage out. So if you don't remove resonances from something, then when you compress them, they'll be turned up. But that's not always bad. Sometimes it can lead to a cool texture in the sound. The other example of sound design is if you use extreme compression, such as limiting, you can add distortion using different attack and release times because you start changing the waveform of the sound. And when you get into analyzing the waves of a sound, it becomes more like a square wave, which is common in synthesis. If you look at this waveform, it has peaks and it has valleys. And so it's not totally compressed to the point that everything is one volume, and that's good because that's not what you want. However, when you exceed 0 decibels, digital clipping occurs, and in the digital domain, you can't go above 0 decibels. So for that reason, the computer will cut off the top of the sound. Say if this was 0 right here, it would become a square, it would become flat. So if you see a song that's mastered, that's why it looks that way. It kind of looks more like a square because it's limited, so there's less of a dynamic range of the entire song, and it's going to stay at whatever average loudness for a longer time, and it's going to sound louder for that reason. But, you know, we don't want that in every scenario because that causes distortion, and it can be good if it's what you intend. But for the purpose of this, again, it's not something that we want. So that basically wraps up all I have to say. If there are any questions, please leave them in the comments. And I might just do a series of these going through each module and explaining my reasons for why I did each thing that I did to this vocal. And so, you know, if you made it this far, thank you for watching and have an awesome day. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen.